Well, for more on President Barack Obama's first 100 days in office, I'm joined by Professor Geoffrey Garrett, CEO of the US Studies Centre. Good morning, Geoffrey Garrett. Welcome to Business Today.
Good morning, Whitney. How are you?
Now, firstly, there's been news this morning that the President's budget has been passed. Does this vindicate his leadership so far?
Well, yes and no. I think the important thing to say in an Australian context is passage of a budget resolution in the US isn't the same as a plan that can be rolled out immediately to spend all of that money. So on the one hand, we know that Obama has strong majorities in Congress and there's broad support for a really big agenda. On the other hand, there's still an enormous amount of heavy lifting to be done on issues like education, healthcare and climate change.
All right. Now, despite some criticisms, Barack Obama, he's done more in his first 100 days in office than many others. What do you think of that?
Well, all the comparisons, of course, go back to the author of the 100-day yardstick, Franklin Roosevelt, in 1933. There are these enormous similarities coming to power in an economic crisis with a lot of international instability. And I think it's obvious that Obama has done much more than many recent American presidents, but part of the reason for that, of course, is that much more needed to be done just because of the sheer magnitude of the challenges and the pressing nature of them.
But the flip side of this, of course, is Stena. So how long do you think that he'll be able to keep this pace?
Well, Obama's a very fit guy. He's aging pretty quickly. He's growing pretty quickly. But I don't think there's any indication that his pace is going to slow down. And more importantly, I think if you want to think about the long term, is the fact that he's really laid down the markers for what the whole course of a presidency, maybe 8 years rather than just 4 years, would be like. So we've got fighting and winning the battle against the global financial crisis. We've got something that really looks like a new social democratic model for the US, plus this kinder, gentler, more cooperative US out there in the world. I think those are the three big themes of the Obama presidency, and he really has laid the foundations for them. Whether he can execute, of course, is a different matter.
All right. So you mentioned the global financial crisis. How well do you think he has performed in terms of trying to pull the US back from the economic brink?
Well, I think at the big picture level, you'd have to say he's done well because he's done basically the three things that people thought he should have done. He passed a big stimulus package. He fit out what he wanted to do with toxic bank assets, and he's talked about a new financial regulation in the US that will bring hedge funds, derivatives, and private equity under the same umbrella. So big picture, it looks very good, but people, of course, have criticized the stimulus package, not enough stimulus, too much pork, too much of the spending too far out, too many tax cuts. People also criticized the bailout because it really took him maybe 6 weeks too long to enact it. I think the outlines of the financial regulation package look pretty nitpick there, but I think on the big picture story would have to be that he's fared pretty well thus far, and of course markets seem to like it, including today.
He also is very willing to publicly admit to the media, at least, his mistakes, which is quite an unusual quality for a politician. We just saw that in the previous story. How much does that go to general sentiment and support for Barack Obama?
Well, he has gone on an enormous transparency sort of messianic crusade, including this potentially really volatile stuff about interrogation methods and torture. I think that plays extremely well with the American public, but of course there are some downside risks as well, and he's having to manage some of those at the moment with this really high-level left-right rancor over the torture memos, which just sheds light on the fact that maybe the biggest thing that he promised that he's been unable to do is to end the partisan bickering. He said he wanted to be a post-partisan president. At the moment, he's looking like a pretty democratic president, with the rift between the Republicans and the Democrats probably wider today than it was when he took office.
All right, I'd like to move on. Let's look at this, the emergence of protectionism. How will the protectionist stance that he's taken as he moves to boost this US economy impact Asian economies?
Well, on the Asian side, I think probably the biggest story was the China exchange rate manipulation saga, where Timothy Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, in his confirmation hearing said that yes, China was manipulating its currency. In American law, that should have meant that the US would have to enact some pretty tough sanctions against China. Obama tried to talk that down. He sent Hillary Clinton to China to try to smooth the tensions. But of course, we've heard a lot, I think an unprecedented amount, coming out of China about their concerns about the US economy, and in particular, the amount of money that Barack Obama is spending, and what does that mean for Chinese asset holdings in the US. So the US-China relationship, there are a lot of tensions there. I think both sides want to manage it. More generally on protectionism, of course, the US actually doesn't look so much different from anybody else these days, which is that when you do big fiscal stimulus packages, you tend to have buy local, hire local, lend local provisions into them. And it's that new kind of financial protectionism that I think everyone's worried about, probably more importantly than anything else, because it's not the kind of protectionism that the World Trade Organization regime was designed to counteract.
Now, earlier you mentioned, looking at his performance on the global stage, you mentioned his kinder, gentler approach. Some of his critics say that that indicates that he's a weak president to other countries. What would you say in terms of his performance with the G20 and the G7?
Well, that's very interesting. You had a really nice soundbite from Bolton, who's an extreme conservative, I think way out on the right-hand edge of American politics here, saying that it was a green light to rogue states to do whatever they want. I think the more hard-nosed criticism of Obama's international feel-good agenda asked the question, what are we getting for it? So at the G20, Obama went in wanting the Europeans to do their own big additional fiscal stimulus. He didn't get any of that. He then went to the NATO 60th anniversary celebrations asking Europe for more troops in Afghanistan. He didn't get any of those. So the hard-nosed question says, yes, the world wanted Obama to be a different kind of global leader. He's being that kind of new global leader, but what's the US getting for it?
All right. Unfortunately, Geoffrey Garrett, we could go on, but we've run out of time. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.